This is the Roots and All podcast, here to help you get growing. Join us as we explore everything plant-related, both indoors and out, and provide the information you need to create your perfect green environment. Presented by Sarah Wilson.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Roots and All podcast. This is a subject that's been much requested. This week I'm speaking to Jason Stevens, who owns a shop called Simply Garden. The shop sells all things garden related, but it's fair to say the majority of the indoor space is given over to houseplants of all shapes, sizes and varieties, so Jason is experienced in dealing with a wide range of plants. In the interest of full disclosure, Jason is my partner, which simply means I felt free to ask him more difficult questions and give him a harder time than I might other guests. So without further ado, here is Jason. So, Jason, thank you for joining me on the podcast. And my first question to you is, how did you get into working with plants?
There are many different reasons why I've got into houseplants. The main one being I was medically discharged from the army after 16 years in 2015. And while I was doing my rehab in Headley Court, I got into gardens indoor and out. I love the well-being in the garden and the mental health that it gives you. So, yeah, I thought I'd try it out. I designed a garden and built a garden, which took me a long period of time, and decided that I wasn't physically able to carry on with the outdoor gardening thing. So I moved into houseplants, and now I have a lovely shop in the old town in Hastings. I still have days where I can't go in because of ongoing treatment, but when I am there, I do put in as much effort as possible.
So, being surrounded by plants in your lovely shop, you could probably tell me what is the easiest houseplant to look after?
Everyone's different, but I find myself that ferns are so easy to look after. It's recommended that everyone has a plant that's as easy to look after, but the easiest one that I sell would be the aspidistra. It's hard as nails, can take a really good beating. If you get to water it, it doesn't mind too much. It's also known as the cast iron plant for good reason. It came from East India and China, and there are about 101 different species of aspidistra at the moment, and they're great. And there's even people in the southeast of England that have got them outside in their gardens and they're thriving, so it's absolutely brilliant plant.
And I know that in the shop you do have people who come in and ask you what is the best plant for a sunny windowsill or for a conservatory. I know this is probably a difficult situation for a plant, but what would you recommend?
You're right, it is a very difficult situation for a plant. There aren't very many plants out there that like direct light all the time, especially in the searing heat that we've just had. But a very popular plant that's near impossible to kill, and I say near impossible to kill because you can kill anything, I would say is the mother-in-law's tongue, or it's also known as a snake plant. Anything that's sharp and can hurt you is generally named after the mother-in-law. So, yeah, this is a good one. It's the ideal specimen for the people that are new to houseplants because it's so hard to kill. If you're busy with other plants, then that's a great one to have in the background. It really is.
Okay, and I know that another plant or a situation that people struggle with is tucked away in a shady corner of a room. And what do you recommend people get for that situation?
These are questions I must get asked 10 times a day in the shop. I think that any fern should do great in a more shadier area, but the best plant for a shady area would be the calathea, sometimes known as a rattlesnake plant due to its markings. But most places do mislabel it as a prayer plant, as in the plant that closes up at night and opens up during the day. It's definitely not a prayer plant. It should be kept out of direct sunlight and should be always moist, but never sitting with its feet wet, and should be misted all the time. They love humidity, so it's a great plant for a shady area of the house. Okay,
and talking of humidity, what plant would do well in a bathroom where people were kind of taking frequent showers or baths and the air was getting fairly humid?
There are so many different types of ferns out there that would love it in a bathroom, but I've got to admit my favourite would be a really large Boston fern. It's best to keep it in indirect light, somewhere that's cool, that has humidity. So a bathroom's great, but make sure that when you do put it in the bathroom, it's not kept in your main bathroom if you've got an ensuite, because you use your ensuite more. So if you do put it in the main bathroom in that situation, you will definitely have to mist it more often than not, because it's not getting daily use, and as in the bathroom, it's not getting daily use.
So what is a good plant for a bedroom?
There are many plants that are great in bedrooms, but they will all take extra care because obviously you only go in your bedroom generally to sleep. But there are many plants that are great for producing extra oxygen in the home. I think the best plants for your bedroom really would be something like the rubber plant or the mother-in-law's tongue, aloe vera or a weeping fig. But my favourite out of everything has to be the peace lily. It's got lovely pink flowers or white flowers, generally white, but you can get the pink variety. Every time a flower goes brown, just let it go completely brown, then remove it and it will replace the flowers in time. It's hard to put a peace lily on a watering schedule because they're very infrequently watered. So just check it every week, and if it's dry, give it a water and go from there.
And how would you check whether it needed watering?
This is the easy one for me. I literally use my index finger and I put my index finger in right to the base. And if I feel that it's wet, then it doesn't need watering. If I can't feel any moisture, then it needs watering.
You don't put your finger right into the base, do you?
Top of the soil.
Yeah, I was going to say...
to the base of my finger, not to the base of the plant. To the base of my finger.
You've got incredibly long fingers if that's what you
very
do.
Long fingers.
I use your ET index finger to check for water.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, I've got a hanging pot and I want a plant that will trail down just like I've seen on Instagram. What would be a good trailing plant for me?
Oh, Instagram has got to be the bane of a plant shop owner's life because everyone's got great pictures on Instagram. There must be people out there that put all their plants into the conservatory, take a picture, then put them back where they actually belong afterwards. They take great pictures, but it's really hard with Instagram because people look at that and think they can reproduce it. There are many plants that you can have that are hanging, but my favourite one has to be the string of hearts. The real name is Ceropegia woodii or Ceropegia woodii. It's a string of hearts. It's a lovely trailing succulent plant. It's native to South Africa, Swaziland and Zimbabwe. It's quite hardy. It requires very, very little maintenance. Literally always water it from the bottom, never from the top. And you can put it in front of a sunny windowsill, high on a shelf, and take full advantage of the way that it drops down and keeps growing. It also has a really exquisite purple flower. It's a great hanging plant, personally.
And talking of flowers then, a lot of plants are noted for their foliage that are grown indoors. Are there any plants that will flower for a longer period of time?
There are a few. You can't go wrong with an orchid. Or you can go for something a little bit different like the anthurium. They do generally flower for about 9 months. You've got to let whatever colour the anthurium may be, you've got to let it go completely brown, cut it off, and it just resprouts and keeps going for about 9 months. They're really nice plants. But my favourite has to be the orchid. They're just a little bit more difficult to look after.
Obviously, when I buy a plant, it'll come in a plastic pot, but I do like to put my plants in a nice pot. Is it possible for me to take the plant out of the plastic pot that it comes in and put it directly into a ornamental container, such as a ceramic pot?
I don't think there's any need to repot your plant straight away. Most plants should come to you in great condition. You should never buy a plant that needs to be repotted straight away because, let's be honest, it's been there for far too long. Unless, obviously, that plant needs to be pot bound. Say the ZZ plant, for example, loves to be pot bound. So it is going to look like it needs repotting, but it doesn't. But you should never really repot straight into a ceramic pot, purely because there's no drainage. When it comes to watering of plants, for me, you should always water from underneath. You can't do that in a ceramic pot with no holes in. And the old wives' tale of putting some pebbles in the bottom, and that will help. I find that it's not true. It may be true, but I find that it's not.
I don't think it is actually. I've seen some experiments online where people have actually shown pictures where they've put a layer of gravel or grit at the bottom of the pot and they've done it in a transparent container, and you can see that the water just sits in the soil. It doesn't actually manage to cross the barrier into the heavier aggregate. So I think actually that is probably, a scientifically true statement as well.
You do get a lot of people that still insist on doing it. You can't stop them, obviously. It's going to take more effort for the plant to survive and the correct watering for it to work. You can if you want to, but I would always recommend to keep it in a plastic pot. And then when you do repot maybe 2 or 3 centimetre bigger pot every time, and then replace that into a ceramic pot.
Also, is there anything else that I need to kind of consider when I get my plant home after I've bought it? If I don't need to repot it, what else should I be doing to kind of make sure that it gets a good start in my home?
To be honest with you, the first thing you need to think about when you're buying a plant is how you're actually going to get it home. And the shop should help you along the way with this. There are many things to think about when you take it home, like how long is it going to be sat in the car for? Have I brought it at the beginning of the day? Should I have brought it at the end? If you buy it and you're going to be shopping in that town for a long time, purchase it and ask the person in the shop to look after it, and they should have no problems in looking after it until you collect it. Just remember to collect it, because the amount of things that people forget to collect from my shop at the end of the day is unbelievable. But generally 90% of them do come back the next day or phone you to say they forgot it. You've also got to think about the wind. So the way that it's packed, obviously it's a houseplant, so it doesn't like to be in the wind and have too much brushing against it, etc. So make sure it's well packed to keep the wind off. It's not blowing all over the place. And rain in this country, we love a bit of rain. So make sure that it's covered and that rain can't get on the plant, etc. And also what time of year you're buying it. If it's cold outside, you've got to go straight home with that plant. You can't buy it and then go shopping for the rest of the day with it in a bag. You can't go and have a drink in the pub on the way home. You've literally got to buy it, get in the car, get in the taxi, get on the train or the tube and get it home as soon as possible. So it goes from one nice area where it's kept lovely and straight home where you're going to do the same thing. But buying houseplants is a difficult decision, but exposure to the elements can have a really detrimental effect. And every shopkeeper worth their salt should tell you how to get it home or offer a solution to get it there, whether they can deliver it for a small fee or even for free, it's even better, or whether they can pack it for you better to get it home.
Once I've got it home, I think probably in terms of getting it off to a good start, I think the key thing there is to actually already have a spot in mind as to where you're going to put it. I know it's really easy to get caught up in the moment in a lovely plant shop and end up buying 3 or 4 plants and then getting them home and trying to shoehorn them into the room that you have. But I do think actually if you could get the right spot for the plant to start with, that's kind of half the battle won, isn't it?
Oh, that is a major part of the battle won. In fact, I had yesterday just in the shop, a gentleman came in to buy 5 or 6 plants for his house. He knew exactly where he wanted them, but I only got him to buy 3 that day and come back when I'm back in on Wednesday to go through the next ones that he wants to buy, purely because he wasn't sure on, one, the size of the pot that it's got to go in, so he's restricted to what he can buy, obviously in size, and 2, exactly the position he wanted to go for. So I always do say to people, either take a picture of the room where it's going to be, a picture of the position where you want it, and show me, and we can advise on that. But sometimes the heart rules ahead and something looks absolutely fantastic and people will buy it because it looks fantastic. They'll get it home and they won't have space for it. If that's the case, then you've really got to do your research, or the person in the shop should be telling you all the information you need to know, so you know where to put it when you get home. And if you have to move something else out of a place to get it there, then you can. But what I would say is don't get it home, put it somewhere, see how well it does, and move it. Doesn't do well there, so you move it again and you keep moving it. It's like backwards and forwards. Put it in a spot, leave it there for a couple of weeks, see how it does. If it doesn't do well in that spot, then you definitely do need to move it, but just move it once or twice. Don't keep moving it, trying to get into the perfect spot, because the plant's going to be in shock from all the moves and it's going to die.
I think that's another problem that you have in the shop. Well, if people report problems to you, quite often it's that they've got their plant home and it's started to shed leaves or it's dropped a few leaves, and people will panic over that. Is there a reason for that happening when they first get the plant home? It's
literally the shock of the move. So obviously they're happy in our shop, and then they move to your house, whether it be 10 minutes or 10 hours away, it doesn't matter. Being moved to a new location is going to have an effect on the plant. So it's going to go into shock initially. So it's going to lose a few leaves, might lose some leaves from the bottom. It may even have new growth, and then that new growth dies straight away. That is just literally the plant just getting used to the new surroundings, and it's perfectly normal. If it dropped all the leaves, I'd be worried. If it drops a couple, there's nothing to be worried about.
Right, so this is going to be a question that I think is probably impossible to answer, but you've got your ET finger, you've stuck it in the pot, and you've ascertained that your plant does need watering. How much water does it need?
That is a question I can't answer. Every plant is different. Every plant requires more or less water than others. The way I do it is in the shop, everything needs water at different times. So I have alarms that go off on different days that tell me what plants need watering, because obviously I buy things on different days. But at home,